Before most of Western Colombia had finished breakfast, the ground began to move. Windows rattled, walls opened, and entire buildings leaned under a force rising from more than 100 kilometers beneath the surface. In less than a minute, an ordinary Monday morning became a national disaster. The earthquake was deep, but it was also immensely powerful, and its energy reached far beyond the mountains of Chocó. At 7:34 in the morning on August 10, 2026, a magnitude 7.4 earthquake struck near San José del Palmar in western Colombia. The Colombian Geological Service placed the focus at a depth of 103 kilometers. The United States Geological Survey calculated 107 kilometers. Those measurements differ slightly, but they describe the same extraordinary event. The strongest earthquake recorded in Colombia during the 21st century. The location mattered. San José del Palmar sits among steep mountains, river valleys, dense vegetation, and roads that can be difficult even in normal conditions. It lies roughly 400 kilometers west of Bogotá, yet the earthquake did not remain a local emergency. Seismic waves spread across the country, shaking large cities, isolated villages, hospitals, airports, schools, and homes almost simultaneously. More than 12,000 people from about 900 populated places sent felt reports to Colombian scientists. Shaking was reported in every major region of the country and across borders in Panama and Venezuela. In high-rise buildings hundreds of kilometers from the epicenter, lamps swung, furniture shifted, and residents rushed toward stairways. The scale of those reports revealed how widely the deep rupture had transmitted its energy. Within minutes, early automatic estimates began circulating. Some placed the magnitude lower, as often happens before scientists review the signals from multiple stations. The Colombian Geological Service later confirmed magnitude 7.4. Its monitoring network, which includes more than 200 stations, continued measuring the main shock and the sequence that followed. Accurate numbers became essential because rumors were already spreading faster than official assessments. The first images from Western Colombia showed streets hidden beneath dust. Concrete slabs had fallen across vehicles. Exterior walls had peeled away from buildings, exposing bedrooms and offices to the open air. In some neighborhoods, the damage was scattered. One structure remained standing while another, only meters away, partially collapsed. That uneven pattern reflected differences in construction, soil conditions, building age, and the direction of the seismic waves. Pereira soon became one of the clearest symbols of the catastrophe. Verified footage captured a four-story building giving way as debris poured into the street. Elsewhere in the city, rescuers listened for voices beneath shops and apartment blocks. Heavy equipment could not simply tear into every pile. Crews first had to identify survivable spaces and remove unstable sections without causing a second collapse. In one operation, emergency workers established contact with a child trapped below a bakery. Cranes were brought in to lift dangerous pieces of the damaged structure while rescuers tried to preserve the narrow space around him. Scenes like this transformed the response into a race measured not only in hours, but in every careful movement of concrete, steel, and broken masonry. Cali, the largest city in Western Colombia, faced a different scale of pressure. Multiple buildings failed, hospitals received waves of injured residents, and some medical facilities suffered damage themselves. Rescue teams used ropes to move people from hospital windows when normal exits could not be trusted. A public emergency and hospital red alert were declared as the city tried to protect patients while continuing to receive new casualties. One of the most widely reported rescues involved a 6-month-old baby and her mother, pulled alive from the ruins of a 5-story building in Cali. Firefighters also brought out adults and children from other collapsed structures. Volunteers worked beside trained teams, sometimes moving rubble by hand. Each rescue offered hope, but every silent section of debris forced crews to slow down and listen again. The earthquake also changed the skyline of Manizales. Part of a side tower on the city's landmark neo-Gothic cathedral broke away and crashed into the streets below. The collapse was more than damage to a historic structure. It became visual evidence that even prominent buildings far from the epicentral town had absorbed violent shaking. Authorities closed nearby areas while engineers examined what remained. Armenia, Quibdó, Cartago, Buenaventura, and smaller municipalities reported their own emergencies. Facades fell, homes cracked, utilities were interrupted, and communications failed in places where information was needed most. In the coffee axis, memories immediately returned to the destructive 1999 earthquake. For families who had lived through that disaster, the sound of collapsing masonry carried a history they had never forgotten. Near the epicenter in Chocó, the situation was harder to see. Mountain roads could be blocked by slides or structural damage. Telephone and internet service was unreliable. Some communities could not immediately send complete reports. That meant the national picture was always incomplete. Dramatic video arrived quickly from large cities, while remote settlements closest to the source remained partially hidden from view. The depth of the earthquake created a scientific puzzle for many viewers. Deep earthquakes often cause less intense damage directly above the source than shallow earthquakes of the same magnitude. But depth can also allow seismic waves to travel across a much broader area. In this case, the enormous magnitude released enough energy for strong motion to reach populated valleys and cities well beyond Chocó. Scientists also examined the type and direction of the rupture. Colombia lies where several major plates and smaller crustal blocks interact. The Nazca Plate descends beneath northwestern South America, while deformation is distributed through a complicated network of faults. This is not a simple boundary drawn as a single line on a map. It is a three-dimensional zone where stresses accumulate at different depths and are released in different ways. The Colombian Geological Service emphasized another important point. The earthquake was tectonic, and it was not caused by activity at the Pereira volcanic chain. False claims linking the two events appeared online because Pereira was already under an orange alert for separate volcanic unrest. Officials said the earthquake near San José del Palmar and the volcanic activity were not connected. Treating coincidence as causation only added confusion during an emergency. The maximum reported intensity reached level 7, associated with very strong shaking and severe damage in vulnerable structures. Magnitude and intensity describe different things. Magnitude measures the energy released at the source. Intensity describes what people experienced and what happened to buildings at a particular location. A single earthquake has one principal magnitude, but many intensity levels across the affected region. This distinction helps explain why some distant buildings were damaged while others near them survived. Soft sediments can amplify motion. Valleys can trap and prolong certain seismic waves. Poorly reinforced walls may fail early, while structures designed and maintained to seismic standards can perform far better. Distance matters, but it is never the only factor controlling destruction. By early August 11, the reported national death toll had risen to at least 132, with more than 570 people reported injured. Those figures were still preliminary. Earlier official announcements had confirmed 111 deaths, and different local totals circulated as agencies reconciled reports from departments and municipalities. In a disaster spread across such a wide area, verification takes time, and the count can change as communication is restored. The uncertainty was not a reason to ignore the numbers. It was a reason to state them carefully. A confirmed death must be linked to a location and an identified authority. Injured residents may be counted first by a hospital, then again by a municipal office. Missing person reports can include duplicated names or people who later make contact. Responsible reporting separates verified totals from estimates and never treats a fast-moving list as final. Early assessments indicated widespread structural damage, with well over 1,000 buildings affected and dozens reported completely collapsed. Yet those figures could not capture the full scale of loss. A building may remain upright and still be unsafe because columns have cracked, stairways have separated, or internal walls have shifted. Engineers therefore marked and inspected structures before residents were allowed to return. After the main shock, the ground did not become quiet. The Colombian Geological Service recorded 18 aftershocks by midday and 21 by late Monday. The early sequence included events ranging from very small tremors to a magnitude near 4.8. Most were centered around San José del Palmar and Sipi. Additional aftershocks were expected as the surrounding rocks adjusted to the sudden change in stress. An aftershock does not need to match the main earthquake to become dangerous. A wall already leaning outward can fall under much weaker motion. A cracked beam can lose its remaining strength. Loose masonry can drop onto rescuers working below. For that reason, search teams continuously watched damaged structures, maintained escape routes, and sometimes paused operations when new tremors were detected. Residents were urged to stay away from visibly damaged buildings and to follow official instructions rather than return for belongings. Elevators could not be trusted after power interruptions or structural movement. Gas leaks, broken electrical lines, and unstable facades created dangers that were not always visible. The safest building was not necessarily the one that appeared least damaged from the street. Hospitals became both rescue centers and potential disaster sites. Medical staff treated fractures, crush injuries, cuts, and trauma while engineers checked the buildings around them. Some patients had to be moved within facilities or evacuated entirely. Ambulances navigated streets partly blocked by rubble, and emergency rooms worked under the pressure of uncertain aftershocks and a continuing flow of victims. Regional transportation was also disrupted. Civil aviation authorities suspended operations at airports including Pereira, Manizales, Quibdó, Armenia, Cartago, and Buenaventura, while specialists examined runways and terminals. These closures protected passengers, but they also complicated the movement of personnel and equipment. Road access remained essential, especially for heavy machinery that could not be delivered quickly by smaller aircraft. In Bogotá, the shaking caused widespread alarm, but not the same level of physical destruction seen in the West. Thousands of people left towers and offices as buildings swayed. Emergency officials checked reports of cracks and other damage. Because the capital's main systems remained operational, Bogotá became a staging point for firefighters, rescuers, supplies, and government coordination. The national government declared an emergency and deployed military, police, medical, and disaster response personnel. Additional security forces were in Cali, where authorities imposed a curfew amid concerns about looting and the need to keep routes open. Curfews were also announced in other affected cities. Their purpose was to reduce traffic, protect evacuated areas, and give rescue convoys room to move. At collapse sites, technology and human judgment worked together. Search cameras were pushed through narrow gaps. Acoustic devices were used to detect tapping or movement. Dogs searched for human scent. But many critical decisions still depended on rescuers kneeling beside rubble, calling into the darkness, and waiting for an answer. Silence could mean there was no survivor, or simply that someone was too weak to respond. Volunteers formed human chains to carry smaller pieces away from the search zones. Their willingness mattered, but uncontrolled crowds could also destabilize debris or block trained teams. Officials asked residents to help through organized channels, donate only requested supplies, and avoid entering restricted areas. In disasters, useful assistance must be coordinated. Otherwise, good intentions can create new risks. Collection points opened for drinking water, food, blankets, hygiene products, and first aid materials. Authorities warned people to verify donation channels because false appeals often appear after major catastrophes. Information itself became a relief resource. A reliable list of open hospitals, safe shelters, passable roads, and missing persons could save time that rescuers did not have. International offers of assistance followed rapidly. Specialized urban search and rescue capacity, medical aid, logistics, and financial support were discussed. As Colombia activated its national response system, but foreign help could only be effective if it matched requests from authorities on the ground. Airports, damaged roads, and the distribution of teams across several departments made coordination as important as the quantity of aid. The catastrophe reopened questions about construction quality and enforcement. Colombia has modern seismic design requirements, but the national building stock is uneven. Some homes were built before current standards. Others may have been altered without adequate engineering. Informal construction remained common in vulnerable neighborhoods. After the rescue phase, investigators will need to determine why particular structures failed and which lessons can prevent the next collapse. The 1999 Coffee Axis earthquake offers a painful comparison. That magnitude 6.2 event was shallower and killed more than 1,000 people, particularly around Armenia and Pereira. The 2026 earthquake was much larger in magnitude, but far deeper. Comparing the two only by magnitude would be misleading. Depth, location, exposure, construction, and the time of day all shape the final human consequences. Colombia records thousands of earthquakes, most of them too small to cause harm. That constant background activity is a reminder that seismic risk is permanent, even when public attention fades. Major disasters expose weaknesses that may have accumulated silently for years. Unreinforced buildings, narrow emergency routes, fragile communications, and communities far from specialized rescue equipment. Preparedness, therefore, begins long before the ground moves. Families need a meeting point and a way to communicate if mobile networks fail. Heavy furniture should be secured. Emergency bags should contain water, medicine, identification copies, lights, and a radio. During shaking, people should protect their head and neck, stay away from windows, and avoid running down crowded stairways while the building is moving. After the shaking stops, the priorities change. Check for injuries, move away from unstable walls and power lines. Do not light a flame if gas may be leaking. Expect aftershocks. Use text messages when networks are overloaded. And most importantly, follow geological and emergency agencies whose information is based on instruments and verified field reports, not on anonymous posts designed to provoke fear. The first 24 hours were dominated by rescue, but recovery will last far longer. Thousands of residents may need temporary housing. Businesses have lost equipment and inventory. Schools, clinics, bridges, water systems, and roads must be inspected. Families must navigate grief while also trying to recover documents, income, and a safe place to sleep. The disaster continues after the cameras leave. Chocó faces an especially difficult road. Its geography slows access, and many communities already lived with limited infrastructure before the earthquake. Rebuilding there cannot mean replacing damaged walls exactly as they were. Recovery must improve access, communications, medical capacity, and seismic safety, or the same vulnerabilities will remain beneath a new layer of concrete. For scientists, the earthquake will produce years of research. Seismic records can reveal how the rupture began, how it propagated, and why shaking intensified in certain basins. Engineers will compare building failures with soil conditions and design practices. These studies cannot reverse the losses, but they can turn evidence from the disaster into stronger codes, better maps, and more effective warnings. For rescue teams, however, the immediate mission remained unchanged. Search the voids, stabilize the slabs, keep hospitals functioning, reach the isolated towns, confirm every report. Each hour reduced the chances of survival. Yet experience has shown that people can remain alive beneath rubble for days when a protected airspace survives. As dawn arrived after the first night, Colombia faced two realities at once. The confirmed toll had grown, and more losses were expected. At the same time, families were still being reunited, survivors were still being carried from ruins, and thousands of responders were still moving toward the hardest-hit areas. Destruction had spread in seconds. The answer to it would require months and years. This earthquake will be remembered for its magnitude, its extraordinary reach, and the images of cities shaken far from the source. But its lasting meaning will depend on what follows. Whether damaged communities are rebuilt safely, whether remote regions receive lasting support, and whether the lessons recorded in broken buildings are acted upon before Colombia's next major earthquake. The ground beneath Western Colombia is still adjusting, and the national totals remain provisional. For now, every official update carries the same warning. Remain alert, avoid unsafe structures, and give rescuers the space they need. Beneath the noise of machinery and sirens, the search continues carefully, urgently, and with the hope that another voice may still answer from the rubble.